So I'll call the regular council meeting to order. It's another electronic meeting. I do recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. And as you'll probably see, I did make it back home. So I'm back in the lovely Cariboo again. The agenda does have one slight change. You would have gotten by way of an email an amendment to the executive report. It's just a slight amendment to the motion with respect to the P&P program. So we can reference that when we're there. You were sent a separate document. It's just one small addition. With that in mind, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Runge, Councillor Vic, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion has passed. And the regular council meeting minutes of April 20th, a motion to adopt. Councillor Roodenburg, Councillor Goulet, any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, anyone opposed? None. Okay, so now we have a delegation here. We had to move them into on camera so we could actually see it rather than just some voice from the ether. So Staff Sergeant Dodge, the floor is yours. Prior to turning it over, just for council's edification, the Public Safety and Policing Committee did go through the RCMP detachment's strategic priorities. And we did have a pretty robust discussion about areas that we can work with our detachment even closer and align some of our initiatives. And so it has been through our PSP committee and is now being presented to all of council. So Darren, over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everybody. I believe you all have a copy of this in front of you. The 5 strategic priorities for the RCMP detachment in Quesnel this year will focus organizational excellence, specifically quality of investigations, organizational excellence, specifically quality of supervision, enhanced public safety, employee excellence and workplace culture, and accountability and governance. As far as the quality of investigations go, we're committed to conducting investigations in a professional, competent, and timely manner. We will achieve that by developing our members, by providing them with opportunities to build skill sets with a focus on investigations, and by a more deliberate method of guidance and mentoring by supervisors and subject matter experts. We're very fortunate in our detachment to have subject matter experts in the areas of search warrants, interviewing, and source handling, for instance, and we'll be relying on those senior members and NCOs to mentor our more junior members. The second strategic priority is organizational excellence / quality of supervision. Again, this is very important as we have a junior detachment at the time. We're committed to ensuring that proper supervision is being performed as it provides the support and direction necessary for the completion of highly professional and timely investigations. The supervisors will provide consistent, thorough, and timely documented guidance and direction on files throughout the life of the investigations, and they will also ensure full compliance with laws, policies, and procedures, as well as all the administrative activities that affect the operations or efficiency of their unit. We will continue to do operational file reviews by the senior NCOs of random files to make sure files are done to our standards. And all junior NCOs, corporals, and watch commanders and unit commanders will undertake the Supervisor Development Program, a 2-week course offered at the Pacific Region Training Center. And our senior NCOs that have not yet taken it will also complete the Manager Development Program at the Pacific Region Training Center. The next priority will be enhanced public safety. As the landscape in the province continues to evolve, we recognize the need to adapt our operations to meet new challenges and proactively prepare for the future. This includes efforts to deliver policing services to increase trust with all of our citizens, in particular Indigenous, marginalized, and racialized populations, improve our approach to public safety issues through partnerships and collaboration with other community-based and social sector organizations, and expand the use of technology to support frontline policing and overall operation. operations. Efforts include the mobile crisis intervention team, which you're all familiar with. We'll be rolling out the situation table shortly, which most of you have been briefed on. Also, we sit on 2 good neighbor committees, which involves the neighbors of Seasons House, as well as the Elliott Street Supportive Housing. Also, we started the quarterly meetings of the Quesnel and Area Chiefs Committee between myself and the leaders of all the 4 First Nations, and also the chief of the SDNA. And so we'll be meeting quarterly in regards to issues around First Nations and policing. And also we meet regularly with the Safer Quesnel Working Group, Amada House, our local shelter, and of course our partners at MCFD. We've also, as far as technology goes, we've enhanced our online reporting system to make it easier for some files to be reported. We're seeing an uptick. It's a slow uptick, but definitely the younger generation prefers to just use an app on the phone to report things. And it's ever expanding and it's ever improving. And we've also recently met with representatives from Quesnel Pride, and they've agreed to attend one of our training days to speak about our relationship with the local LGBTQ plus community. And when we have training days, we've kind of stood down training days because of COVID. So when those commence, we'll have that presentation. We'll also this year concentrate on employee excellence and workplace culture. We're committed to improving the inclusiveness of our detachment through enhanced awareness and action on issues such as systemic racism, cultural competency and humility, discrimination, and all forms of harassment. And in regards to the health of our members, we also strive to prioritize the physical and mental health, wellness, and resiliency of our employees, support our employees at all stages of their careers, provide training and professional development to enhance their job performance and a positive workplace culture. And we will evolve our workplace strategies to be responsive to emerging challenges. Some of the courses that are mandatory for members this year will be a course on Aboriginal and First Nations awareness, cultural awareness and humility, bias awareness for employees and managers, the Aboriginal Perceptions Program, and as I mentioned before, Quesnel Pride has been invited to attend one of our training days when they commence. As far as the mental and physical health of our members, we've also, more emphasis will be placed on critical incident stress debriefings for our members after they've been to critical incidents. And we will be also ensuring that members take their annual leave. We have many members that yearly do not take the leave allotted to them for various reasons. Going back to 2017, the fires, and 2018, the fires, a lot of members in this detachment forgo or did not take their leave, and they chose to stay in the community during that emergency, and that's still affecting us today. And we, of course, will continue to monitor our staff and employees' overall wellness throughout the year. And finally, and this is another reason why I'm here, is accountability and governance. We're committed to building and maintaining trust and confidence among the public, our contract partners, and stakeholders through enhanced transparency and accountability. And we'll do this by improving our consultation with municipal, Indigenous, and community partners, by ensuring our processes and services align with the priorities and expectations of our community, and by prioritizing activities and services that are sustainable and contribute to transformational change. This is one of attending council meetings, attending meetings of the Public Safety and Policing Committee, reporting regularly on our activities with our First Nations, meeting with them weekly, as well as the Chiefs Committee quarterly, meeting with community groups such as the Downtown Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, other groups where we've been asked to attend and present, and partnering with the school district. Obviously, we have school liaisons in each school, and we partner with the school district with at-risk youth. And unfortunately, because of COVID this last year, we've stood down the DARE program. We don't have a regular DARE officer in the schools this year. We're hoping, depending on how things roll out in the fall or maybe next winter, to re-up that program as soon as we can, because it's been a well-received program for many years here. That is it as far as the strategic priorities go. I'm open for any questions of any topic or anything on the priorities or anything else from council.
Councillors, floor is yours. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, staff, for that report. You did touch on the subject of my first question, and that is the policing outreach program in schools, which is the DARE program. Has that DARE program been set aside for the time being due to COVID?
Yes, sir. In this community, it has. It's no longer being taught. RCMP members are no longer being trained in that program, but we're fortunate in this community to have one or two officers that are trained in DARE, and we'll continue to roll out that program and for the foreseeable future.
Well, thank you. I do hope that it can continue, and if necessary, that it can at least continue in an electronic format. My second question is, and this may be a question that might have to go to major crime section, and that is, where is Quesnel and the North Cariboo area at on the scale of missing persons and unsolved murders?
So I'll talk about missing persons, Mr. Paul. We in this detachment, for everyone's awareness, last year, for instance, in the year 2020, the Quesnel detachment investigated 96 missing persons investigations last year, 96. We still unfortunately have a missing person from last year. This year, from January till this week, we've investigated, including today, we've investigated 22 missing persons reported to us this year. And unfortunately, we still have Mr. Sidney Boyd is still missing, and that's still actively working on. In regards to your question, outstanding or historic types of files, no files with a missing person or a homicide are concluded until a charge is laid or the person is found. These files remain open at all times. We investigate all current tips that come into us at all times, and we do periodic reviews of files involving missing persons and homicides. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we do have missing persons files that go back to the early 1960s. And those files were actually reviewed a few years ago, and there's a continual review. But if we do receive active tips, we investigate them immediately, or the unit responsible, Mr. Paul. In this case, some of the files that have occurred outside the city limits are the purview of the North District Major Crime Unit or the E Division Serious Crime Unit. And they traditionally, people will come to our detachment and give us information, and we relay that immediately to those investigative bodies.
Okay, thank you. And I do hope that when you do your annual report, and I believe that's in the fall, if I'm not mistaken, that perhaps we could see those numbers as to where, I'm interested in knowing where Quesnel and the North Cariboo sits in terms of missing persons and unsolved murders.
Absolutely, I'll get those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from other councillors? Okay, seeing none, and as I indicated, we had quite a robust conversation, and I know the city manager has been following up with the staff sergeant on some opportunities for us to align some of our priorities. For example, the work with the reconciliation work we're doing with First Nations, some of the things that we're doing with our downtown business association, other business associations on public safety, etc. So this priority list, I think, reflects well on both the detachment sense of what needs to be done in the community and reflects well in terms of our own strategic lens that we've put on this matter too. So thank you, Darren. I appreciate your time. And, you know, even though you're on camera, feel free to go back and do some real work somewhere else. So
thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Darren. Okay. Next up, the Finance Committee, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's going to be pretty straightforward. This is from our last meeting on April 20th. And just a few of the topics that were discussed, the audit report presentation and review of the financial statements. We all saw that later on that day from KPMG. Finance department update. They're still working on all the tax notices and flyers. And we did have one spending issue reported, and that was the sewer break at the train station. So that's being worked on right now. At this point, there's no recommendations for me to bring forward, as Director Bolton is bringing the first two, and the last one was time sensitive, April 20th. So this is just for information purposes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any questions for the Finance Committee? Chair? Okay, moving on now to the Executive Committee Chair, Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to deliver a report tonight on the meeting we had at Executive on April 21st. I hope everyone's read it. I'm not going to read it verbatim. There's quite a bit to go through. The first thing that we tackled was the Immigrant Entrepreneur Regional Pilot Update. This was a program that began pre-COVID. And basically the central theme is sort of highlighting immigrant entrepreneurs, certain investment opportunities and investment sort of specialties that we would encourage to move to make investments and then come to Quesnel. Quesnel received 207 inquiries, which translated into 3 approvals. But unfortunately, COVID interrupted this program. Thankfully, the program has been extended, and there's been one significant change. The NAICS code, which is North American Industry Classification System, that's what NAICS is. That is the way we prioritize the immigrant investment. And it's been opened up from 3 codes to 11, which is excellent for us because we can be far more broad in the investment opportunities. We can choose to opt to add the full complement of codes now or add a few codes as we go. And Manager Reed has given us some great suggestions on those codes, and that will follow in our recommendation at the end of the report. Having additional categories will bolster this program and encourage more inquiries for investment in Quesnel. And this would be positive for economic development and growth. And most importantly, it enhances opportunities to attract skilled entrepreneurs to the community. Next, we talked about needle cleanup in the community. We discussed the status of the cleanup program in Quesnel. The current program is managed by the Quesnel Shelter and Support Society and is funded until June. As part of the recent Strengthening Communities grant application, which we made not long ago, needle cleanup was identified as one project within that application. And should we get approval on that grant, we will have funding for needle cleanup. Notwithstanding that announcement, with the Strengthening Communities application, staff will continue to engage with community partners, including BC Housing, the business improvement areas, and the Shelter Society to determine how to best support the continuation of this program. We all agreed that it's very necessary in our community, certainly from public safety, from a health perspective, it's an important program. So we'll continue to work to make sure that we do what we can to keep this program continuing. And then we discussed the Mental Health Youth app. Several years ago, the Healthy Community Committee received grant funding to develop material for a youth mental health app, which gave guidance to youth on suicide prevention supports such as that. Although the app did see its final development and there was a working app, the program did not have sustainable funding to keep the app going year over year. There was discussion that to keep this function alive, you could encourage a service club in the community to keep it going. But as the dialogue continued, we discussed the fact that the Foundry program is expanding in the province of BC. In fact, this year in the provincial budget, the goal is to increase Foundry centers from 11 to 23. So Quesnel has a much better chance of getting success with our new partner applying. And within the Foundry priorities, mental health for youth is a key priority. So it was felt by the executive committee that this could be easily adopted or handled by those folks, should the Foundry program come to be in Quesnel. So there's no further action recommended by the committee regarding this app. We move on to RV park naming. As the RV park municipal campground is moving forward, it's appropriate we start to think about a name for this park. And it was suggested that council have a hand in the process. The committee felt an indigenous name would be a great choice for our next park. So we've asked Manager Reed to discuss some possibilities for that name with the LHTAKO DENE. She's already talking with LHTAKO on the interpretive project on the Riverfront Trail. So as part of that dialogue, we've asked her to discuss some naming opportunities. And once we have a few choices, we look forward to presenting those to council as soon as possible. Next, we discussed the gold pan color. The committee took a few moments to discuss that because the backdrop project is approaching for the gold pan. And basically, we've sort of narrowed in on a gray color, and it could range from a light gray to a dark gray. So we've asked for a few choices. And when we have those samples reviewed, we'll get back to you. Shovel-ready investment projects. With the first review of projects complete, staff are continuing to pare down our very large list to 3 or 4 potential projects that'll be appropriate for the NDIT Strategic Investment Grant. That intake is in mid-July, so a short list is to be brought to executive as quickly as possible. And we're thinking, if not the next meeting, the meeting after. Electronic voting. The recent council e-vote for Mr. Mike's patio illustrated a need to fine-tune our process. In particular, we determined that we need to know definitively who moves and seconds a motion during an e-vote. So the following process, as written, we'll consider for an upcoming meetings norm policy review in the fall. And in brief, the mayor will be deemed the mover of the motion, as an e-vote cannot occur without the mayor. And then the standing committee chair or committee liaison most relevant to that motion would become the seconder. And of course, when e-votes are brought to council, it will be for information only and will not require a re-vote or a confirmation vote. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes the report, and we'll move to recommendations.
Yeah, just hang on one second. We'll make sure that we've got the right recommendation there, Councillor Vic, but just let's see if any questions or comments before we close off with the recommendation. Councillor Runge and then Councillor Paul.
Thank you. I'm just wondering with regards to your final topic there, Councillor Vic, electronic voting procedures, and on that meetings norms policy. Could there be some discussion with regards to e-votes happening really close to council meetings, or within days of council meetings? Because it brings up for me that if we have a person who moves the motion and a second, and the e-vote is either a yay or a nay, when does the discussion on a vote happen? If we don't have, if it's only for information at the council meeting afterwards. And that was really my question, because I was trying to find out, where do we have that transparency of our discussions on things where we have them, no matter what they are. And Mr. Mike's was, I think, a pretty easy one. I'm just thinking in the future for something else, maybe.
Yeah, so basically we wouldn't bring forward anything of a nature that's misaligned with our strategic initiatives, is not part of the city's normative operations. That there really needs to be a substantive discussion by council before we would consider voting something. E-votes generally are something that's time sensitive, but aligned with council's either strategic plan, transition plan, budget, or whatever the case may be. But because of the time sensitive nature, we have to advance it. So for the most part, they shouldn't warrant discussion. The thing with Mr. Mike's was it was absolutely aligned with the direction that we gave to staff to expedite getting patio extensions done. And the reason that there was the time sensitivity is that Mr. Mike's wanted to move on that very quickly. The only sort of contestable issue was that accessible parking stall, right? So there was a bit of a blend on that one, but the patio extension was certainly a direction council had given to staff. So for the most part, Councillor Runge, we would not advance an e-vote that was out of keeping with the general direction and the general sort of operations of the city under the council. And it would only be a time sensitive nature. So, but this is just a reference point for a big cleanup that we will do in the fall. It'll come through your committee. So, you know, the council procedures bylaw, the council code of conduct, and the meeting norms. So this is just a reference back to your committee, and we're going to sit and take a substantive look. And I think the question that you're asking of, you know, do we need something that says when should we use an e-vote or when is it appropriate to use an e-vote, can be canvassed at that time. And then the reason for cleaning it up in the fall is getting it tidy, because then the candidate packages that go out in the new year for the next election will be, we'll have learned all the lessons from this council, incorporated into those documents, because they're the substantive part of the candidate packages that go out too. So, okay.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Vic, for your report. Just going back to the needle cleanup, at one point, we were receiving information about numbers of discarded needles that were found and collected, but we don't see those numbers anymore. And my question is the number of discarded needles going up, going down, or remaining static?
Well, and the mayor may have other information. I only have anecdotal information from the business improvement area in the downtown, and more or less anecdotally the amount of cleanup has remained consistent. So it hasn't gone up or down. It's been about the same. But I know there are hot spots on the west side for with a lot of discard issues. Councillor Roodenburg might have some feedback on that. But unfortunately, I'm not aware if we've ever given numerical data on a daily basis or anything for needles picked up, Councillor Paul.
No, we've not, to my knowledge, have we ever been given data on a consistent basis. When we got involved in assisting temporarily the needle pickup program, we did get some information, but we knew at that time that even that information wasn't going to be that accurate, but we did get a bit of information. But we've never had, I'm going to look to Director Bolton because you would have been more privy as to if anything came through staff, but not to my recollection were we getting consistent information.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing any info like that.
No. Go ahead, Councillor Paul, and then I see Councillor Roodenburg.
Thank you. Can you hear me? My mute button is kind of faulty. Yeah, I do recall, and I think council will recall that at one point we were getting little bits of information from Bylaw, and it didn't only deal with needles. It was just general cleanup. And I'm not looking for anything specific. I'm just looking to know whether you know, the problem is on the increase, or, but as Councillor Vic says, it appears that it's remaining relatively static.
Well, and again, we should be clear, the program's still running. So we're trying to make sure the program doesn't get interrupted is what is happening right now. Councillor Roodenburg.
So number one, yes, the program is still running. And that we're trying to make sure there isn't that lag in between when they run out of money and when we can, you know, hopefully get the grant move in. As far as the west side is concerned, I would echo Councillor Vic's comments about kind of just, it has its moments and then it doesn't. And what I recall also is just basically hearing back from the fact that, you know, there was X number of hours that were being used by the clean team to go out and about to do their cleanup. So that's what I recall being reported back, more than anything to do with the volume or numbers.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments on the report? Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just an echo to Councillor Roodenburg's, I think we got the hours rather than how many needles we were they were picking up. But my thing, I just want to go back to the needles. So just so I'm clear, they have funding until June, and then we put it, there's been an application process started to renew that after June, and we don't know. So we're in May and got another, what, month, maybe 2 months to figure this out. What happens, is there going to be a plan put forward? And I guess that might come to us later as to what happens if the funding isn't there after June and how we continue with the needle program. Is that going to happen at some point rather quickly? Like, I don't know what the timing is or how they go with the application process.
So Councillor Vic, do you want to echo the sort of commentary around this that we had at exec?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. The conversations with partners are ongoing right now, Councillor Goulet. So the hope is that if there's a lag on the grant, that we may be able to have an arrangement or a partnership with any number of partners, including BC Housing, the BIAs, to keep this program going. So those conversations are happening right now, but obviously we're hopeful we're going to get the large grant that we asked for about a month ago, and that there's a segment within that grant that will pay for this program. So I don't know if the mayor would like that.
The only thing I would add is council needs to be very, very careful that we don't position ourselves that somehow we're going to come in and backfill and finance this program. It is not our program. We do not distribute these needles. It is Northern Health that distributes the needles and other agencies, and it's BC Housing that facilitates that, and they should be picking up the tab for picking them up. And I think council needs to take a very strong position on that. It was similar to the dialogue we had with the Youth Health app. We engaged as a partner in the Youth Health app. It was funded by Northern Health. Once the sustainable so-called funding runs out, then people look to the city of Quesnel to pick it up, and it's not why we collect property taxes. So I think we just need to be careful around this. So Councillor Vic is correct. We are having ongoing conversations with the agencies that ought to be funding this. We have included it in a very robust kind of eclectic grant. We're not sure the time frame for us hearing back about that grant, but I think come June, if we don't have any indication anybody's picking up the tab, this needs to come back to council for strongly worded demand letters on health and BC Housing to make sure the program does not lapse. And that's really where the critical issue is, I think, for us. Okay. Anything else on exec report? Okay, so Councillor Vic, just so all of council is aware, the PMP program resolution is the late item because there was a change. So you should have been sent by email a specific attachment. And the difference is one difference, and it's the addition of one of the codes, 115, support activities for agriculture and forestry. Otherwise, the remainder is the same. So it's just the addition of one of those North American industry codes. So Councillor Vic.
Yeah, so the recommendation, should I read out the recommendation? That the executive committee recommends that council approve continued participation in the province of BC Provincial Nominee Program Entrepreneur Immigrant Regional Pilot with the following North American Industry Classification System codes. And there are about a dozen codes there. And then as the mayor intimated, code 115 is the late addition, and that staff may pause, modify, remove from, or add to this list over the course of the pilot according to response and changing community need. And I would move that recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rund, you seconding? Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? On the motion, anyone opposed? The motion has carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Vic, for your report. Councillor Roodenburg attended the CRD meeting on my behalf as the alternate for the Cariboo Regional District. And so again, this is for information only, but Councillor Roodenburg, if there's anything worth highlighting, now is your chance.
No, I'm going to assume that everybody had a chance to peruse it, and it was pretty basic meeting, that particular CRD meeting.
Yeah, okay. Any questions on the CRD update? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that this is the matter of deteriorating roads is actually addressed in the board highlights, but what I'd like to hear from Councillor Roodenburg, or I guess Director Roodenburg in this case, was that discussion substantive, and what is the level of concern at the CRD board table about the deterioration of roads in the North Cariboo?
And just for clarity, Councillor Paul, because I know you like to be accurate, it would accurately be alternate Director Roodenburg, just so we're clear.
So, I mean, okay, I am, okay, good. To say that there isn't a very high level of concern about the state of roads throughout the Cariboo Regional District would be an understatement. At the time, a couple of the roads that have gone or that have gotten worse hadn't happened as of this meeting date. And so basically it was just a discussion about how things are moving forward and the concern on costs, right? And when things are going to get taken care of.
Yeah. So just a quick follow-up to that, just because Councillor Paul's happened to raise the topic. As you're all aware, the condition of the roads in the Cariboo, specifically the roads around Quesnel, has been in the news a fair bit, with a lot of alarmism, quite frankly. Most of those roads have workarounds. It is not a situation like you had up in the Peace where an entire community gets trapped, or if a bridge gets knocked out, an entire community gets trapped. So really at this stage, there's inconvenience for folks as these roads get in pretty rough shape and or fail and or have landslides into them. People do have workarounds, so we're very fortunate in that regard. I did get a phone call from the minister this afternoon, unsolicited by me. I put him down. It was one of those things of put something out in the universe. So I put it down for a phone call tomorrow to his staff, but he called me this afternoon. So the minister will be on CBC tomorrow and speak to some of the things that his staff is working on. They will be deploying emergency resources to our area, and particularly the roads around Quesnel, both equipment and personnel. And they are expediting the geotechnical and engineering review of some of the main ones that have become problematic. So he'll be speaking to that. And then he is hoping to get up sometime in June. So to Councillor Paul's point, I'll be talking to the chair of the CRD, because I think it would be good for him to have some opportunity to speak with the CRD around what his thoughts are. And I think he's on the right track about really taking a look at all of our roads around our area in a strategic lens, because we have a lot. And it really begs the question of, if you're going to make investments, where should you be making those investments? Not every road can be invested in, particularly when there's so many different and alternate routes, right? So I think it's time for a strategic investment in our area on key roads that are then, restructured, rebuilt, and maintained in this changing climate. So that's going to be an ongoing conversation. Trust me, Councillor Paul, not just down at the CRD, but with respect to our feeder roads around here too. Okay, with that in mind, let's move on to staff reports then. Director of Financial Services, Director Bolton.
Okay. So the purpose of this report is to seek the first three readings of the City of Quesnel 5-year financial plan bylaw and the City of Quesnel tax rate bylaw. So the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee has reviewed and recommends both bylaws. So the financial plan has been built based on council's strategic initiatives and feedback from the public, and the operating budget and the 5-year capital budget already approved by council. It includes the additional snow levy of $165,000 and the program to reduce the light industry tax rate to be the same as the business tax rate over 3 years. It also now includes all the allocations from surplus, the approved uses of the COVID Safe Restart Grant, and capital carry forwards. The tax rate bylaw includes the shift in light industrial taxes. It also includes recreational rates now being set as the same as residential rates as approved by council. So the average residence in Quesnel, valued at $229,367, will see an increase of 33.53 in the municipal tax portion of their property tax invoice, or $14.62 per 100,000. I have included a breakdown attached of what the changes for the average single-family residence will be. In commercial business will see an increase of $52.50 per 100,000 of assessment. So last year, of course, the province lowered the school tax rates for all the commercial classes, but this year it goes back to normal, so that commercial businesses will see an increase in their property tax just due to that, to the school tax going back to normal. Also last year, the province set the penalty date at October 1st, and they're not doing that this year, so we're returning to our normal dates of July 2nd is when property taxes are due, and penalties are applied on July 3rd. And then a big change this year is the city will no longer be collecting information for homeowner grants. That's all going to be done through the province. So we will be sending out lots of information. There'll be information on your property tax bill in the flyer on our website so that people know what they have to do this year. So the recommendation is that council proceed with the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel Financial Plan Bylaw No. 1906 of 2021 in the bylaw section of the agenda. And the council proceed with the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel Tax Rates Bylaw No. 1907 of 2021 in the bylaw section of the agenda.
Yeah, we don't need a mover or seconder on this. It's the recommendation from Finance Committee as well as the staff report. So we'll deal with it in the bylaw section. And for the public who watch this, this is the kind of the ultimate appraisal of a very long process. So council members have seen this in multiple iterations, and the Finance Committee worked it in multiple ways before bringing it to council. So are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the homeowner grant, it appears that the way that we're going to have to apply for the homeowner grant is online.
Or by telephone.
Or by telephone.
Oh, okay, that's fine, because I was thinking about seniors that,
Yeah.
or anyone that wasn't tech savvy, but a telephone will do it. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So just a note, as this gets tightened up as we move into our bylaws, on 2 things. One, I think it's important that council internalize that the school tax rate is going back up. So commercial property owners, it's going to be a bit of a sticker shock for them with that coming back up again. And because the tax notice has City of Quesnel on it, there's always confusion about which portion we influence as council. So I would suggest you lock those numbers in. The portion we influence for council is seeing $52.50 per 100,000 assessment on the commercial side. The big jump that people are going to see will be because the school tax rate is coming back up to normal plus. The other statement I would make is we have had some queries about waiving penalty or delaying penalty. And the answer to that is absolutely not. We have no discretion on that front at all. And so, if you do get some folks coming to you who, potentially, and particularly in the commercial side, who may be looking for a bit of a break, to pay their taxes a bit later or whatever, if they're going to do that, they're going to pay the penalty, and there's nothing that we can do about that. And they need to be aware of that. So we've had that.
Yeah. And I can send a copy of the legislation if they want to see it. It's provincial legislation that requires us to charge that penalty when we do.
Yeah. Okay. We got the latitude last year by the province allowing us to set the tax rate late. That de facto gave us the ability to not collect penalties when people didn't pay in the July window. But it was by setting the tax rate later as tax collection date later in the year. So we still had to collect penalties immediately after that date as well. Councillor Paul.
Thank you. And I've asked this question before. I kind of know what the answer is, but I will ask it again. and that is, has there been any discussion at UBCM and particularly with the professional staff associations about the possibility of redesigning or designing the tax notice so that it is abundantly clear what is municipal and what is non-municipal? The way the tax bill or the tax notice is designed, all of those line items are sort of blended together, and at a quick read, the taxpayer really doesn't know what is municipal and what is, I mean, we know, but it would be great if a tax notice could be sort of set out in two blocks, one for local municipal and the other one for non-municipal.
Yeah, I'll let Director Bolton speak to that because I don't see it the same
Yeah.
way.
So the format of our tax bill is actually set by our software. So every different municipalities use a different type of software, and it really sets the format. We try very carefully by the names that are on there to list what they relate to. We also usually put in the flyer that goes with it a little breakdown showing how much is municipal, how much is school, how much is CRD. So we try very hard to explain it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to update our notice next year because with the change to the homeowner grant, it kind of made it a little sloppy this year and we want to clean it up next year. I'll look and see if there's any more ways we can separate it, but it is what it is and it's all one notice.
Yeah, and I would echo that, Councillor Paul. I think both with the tax notice and the tax bill itself, you know, anybody who's paying attention to the breakdown's embedded in our notices. I don't know how we could make it any clearer. Councillor Paul?
Thank you. I think it could be just as simple as having a blank space in the middle of the line items so that a person could easily see that everything above the blank space is City of Quesnel and everything below the blank space is other.
Yeah, well, it's
We
more
can
than
look
that.
at-
Anyway.
I was gonna say, we can look at our options, but one thing we're very careful of is we don't want to push the bill onto another page because the postage involved in having that second page and everything, right? So we're trying to keep it on one page.
Okay. Okay. So any other questions on this? We'll deal with the actual recommendation in the bylaw section. Okay, moving on then. Next staff reports from Director of Community Services, Director Norburn.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to obtain council approval to renew the contribution agreement with the Cariboo Regional District for the Quesnel Visitor Center. In 2018, the city entered into a 3-year contribution agreement with the CRD regarding the visitor center, and that agreement expired December 31st, 2020. Prior to the establishment of this agreement, the CRD had been providing funding on a year-to-year basis at the same level of $10,000. The CRD has proposed a renewal of the 2018 agreement for the next 3 years, with the only change being an increase to the contribution amount of $10,000 to $15,000. The draft agreement amendment is attached to this report along with the original 2018 agreement. The recommendation from staff is that council enter into the attached 3-year renewal and amendment agreement with the Cariboo Regional District regarding the operation of the Quesnel Visitor Center, and that the mayor and corporate administrator be authorized to execute such documentation as required to complete the agreement.
Okay. On the recommendation, Councillor Elliott, so moved. Seconded. Councillor Vic, questions or comment? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that motion has passed unanimously. Thank you, Director Norburn. And next, Director of Public Works. You've shifted so we can see your face.
I move.
Go ahead.
So,
Over to you, Mayor.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council's approval to proceed with the following unforeseen road repairs. And they would be at the following locations: Abbott Drive, Flamingo at Perry Street, Wilkinson Avenue, Tingley Drive at Tuan Avenue. After the winter season, the above mentioned roads have broken down to a point where driver safety is a concern. Although these roads have been discussed for future repairs, it became apparent that these repairs cannot wait. Other roads other road repairs such as Rita Road, Anderson Drive, and Doherty Drive have already been earmarked for repairs under the capital paving projects and the existing asphalt patching accounts, and these should not be pushed out years. The recommendation is that council approve the above mentioned road repair patches for 2021 at approximately $200,000 to be funded out of the capital reinvestment fund.
Okay, Councillor Runge, so moved, seconded. Councillor Vic, questions or comments? Councillor Paul, and then Councillor Runge, and then Councillor Vic.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that we add another part to this recommendation, and I've written it down here, that additionally, that staff consider and recommend, if necessary, whether the annual road repair budget allotment should be increased in anticipation of continuing deterioration of city roads and streets.
No, we do that on an annual basis anyway, Councillor Paul. You don't need to add that as a recommendation. That's exactly what Public Works does on an annual basis, and it's part of both our capital and our maintenance planning. So this is just an accident circumstance because of the particular winter and why it's coming outside of the budget. But the very fact that Director Thomas can bring it outside of the budget shows that it's an iterative process. So it's not an effective addition. So go ahead, Councillor Runge.
Thank you. And Dr. Thomas, I absolutely agree with this going on some of these streets. I'm glad to see that we could move these forward because they are fairly, tough on the vehicle. My question is though, do you think we've already seen all of the movement that we're going to see this year, or is there a need for like a little buffer, like for an extra small road or something, or is that once again one of those to go to another meeting?
So again, we can tap into reserves. It's the exact same point Councillor Paul's making. So from a process perspective, we are already using the process. So Director Thomas has identified some roads that were not part of our planning process for this year. As the report notes, they were part of us looking at out years doing the repairs. So they're being advanced into this year. But the very fact we're able to do this doesn't require then either an addendum to the motion for process or an addendum for cash or anything. If Director Thomas finds that post when everything's settled in June or July, we've got more roads that have gone, he just does exactly what he's doing now and brings it forward and names the roads.
Thank you. And so I'm definitely in favor of this given what's happened this year.
Okay, Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, considering the road deterioration in other parts of North Cariboo, is it possible to connect the dots with these issues with the sort of the exigent circumstances with other roads? And then where that's leading to is if there's any support from the province, could we petition to have some assistance with these repairs?
These are our own, this is our own infrastructure. It's very unlikely that we'll get any help from EMBC. It would have to be a life and safety issue, an actual event occur before EMBC would step in.
So there's only two ways that we would get that as an exigent circumstance. There's no way that the province is going to step on nominal repairs like this in a municipality, because you can imagine the can of worms they're opening up. And we maintain our roads and we use taxpayer dollars to maintain our infrastructure. There's lots of municipalities who don't, who are waiting for the very circumstance that you're suggesting, Councillor Vic, where the province is going to somehow come to the rescue because their infrastructure is so crapped out, right? So the only situation would be a catastrophic event where a combination of emergency management BC and disaster financial relief come in to bear, which is the situation that we're experiencing with the sewer repairs that we're doing as a result of Baker Creek. So these are on us. And again, as Director Thomas points out in his report, these were starting to age out anyway. They were earmarked for repairs. We're advancing that because the winter was harder on them than we had expected. So I don't think it's, getting into a dialogue with the province about giving us money from the province. Gas tax funds effectively from the federal government are for supplemental to to property taxes for roads and sidewalks and those kinds of repairs. We don't get anything of that kind from the province, but we do get funding for, major infrastructure projects if we join them, i.e. the interconnector project or some of the Canada infrastructure grants that they participate in. But we're not going to get it for something like this. So just a non-starter.
Yeah, if I could too, I think it's important to note that these sort of repairs that are identified are sort of certain areas of roads. It's important to note that, Perry, for example, it's being looked at for a repair from Lark Avenue all the way to Lewis Drive in out years. We're focusing on that complete breakdown of that one area. This isn't a total rebuild of Perry Street or anything. It's sort of the breakdown area.
Yeah, and I think the due diligence on our part to have the reserves to be able to do these kinds of things is another, earmark of good financial discipline on our part and good financial planning on our part, that Director Thomas can come and say, we need to do this. And Director Bolton goes, yeah, where's the money? Okay. The only thing nitpicking, Director Thomas, in your report under council policy, that line actually can just be kind of deleted if there's not a policy that you're going to point to. Just sort of saying, when you're cutting and pasting, you need to cut a little more there.
I did delete some. I did notice that one. I was hoping nobody else would. Yeah.
I just got to take the edge off of you there. Okay. So, sorry, Rhea, catch me up. We have a mover and seconder, but we haven't voted.
No.
Okay, so anyone opposed to this? Seeing none, that motion is carried. And as I said, from a council perspective, this is the process that we would use. So if there are more issues, Director Thomas will bring them forward like this, and then it'll be fit into our financial plan accordingly. Okay. Next is the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Mayor. The subject of this report is support for research on the overdose alert system at bridges. On April 20th, researchers Joshua Muir and Jenny Lee presented their project to council. This project is to do with the Quesnel Shelter and Support Society, partnering with UNBC to fund an overdose alert system at bridges supportive housing. The funding needed is $25,000 for a 3-month trial for an overdose monitor device that can detect health symptoms of an overdose within a private residence at bridges supportive housing. Council will recall the presentation that that Bridges gave and the discussion that was had. At this time, staff is recommending that council approves providing the $25,000 to the Quesnel Shelter and Support Society from the dollars set aside for vulnerable persons under the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant to fund research for the development of a health monitoring device to detect drug overdose at bridges supportive housing.
Councillor Elliott, are you making the motion? Councillor Goulet, second. Okay, questions or comments on this? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the budget, it is proposed that the 2 full-time developers are paid at $4,000 per month each. Is this amount only for the initial or only for the 3-month initial development process period, or would that be ongoing for future continuation of the program?
This is just for the development program.
Okay, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
And we're making no forward commitment. This is to see if this system can be developed and run. And then, hopefully if it is something that works, then the province, I think, would be very interested in it, as would BC Housing, Northern Health, etc. So, okay. Other questions or comments? I thought I saw a hand. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, just quickly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think that's an important question that Councillor Paul brought up, because as mentioned earlier on some of these things, we want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up to continue to fund something that maybe should be coming from the province or the health. But for me, the key there is just to fund the research, which I think is extremely important.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Okay. Now, the only thing I would like, Director Turner, if possible, could we work with our communications folks to make sure that this is communicated as part of the work we're doing with our vulnerable populations, and work with both the researchers and the Quesnel Shelter Society to make sure that we're letting the community know we're doing this work. I think it's very important work, and I think it's important the community knows what it's about and what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Next up, the Director Bolton, strategic plan.
So the purpose of this report is to present the City of Quesnel strategic plan for 2021 to 2023 to Council for adoption. Progress towards the 2020 strategic goals is also noted. So this is something we've reviewed several times. Because Council is more than halfway through its current mandate, the strategic plan represents more of a continuation of existing initiatives rather than a major revision. So the recommendation is that Council approves the attached strategic plan for 2021 to 2023, which we will then put in our annual report.
Okay, can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Elliott, so moved. Councillor Roodenburg, second. Any questions or comments? Councillor Runge, then Councillor Paul.
Thank you. Just looking at the strategic plan, will there be a chance for us to add to this plan sometime at a other meeting possibly? You know, just as, especially with regards to environmental things and the, I think it was the last point there on the plan. I just don't have it on my computer here with regards to green technology and things like that. Because there's some cool things that.
And we'll review, have an opportunity for council to do that in the fall. We did that with this reflective of that. And the key ones are, have been changed. The main thing coming from council was one of the next reports, more strategic communications, more use of video, etc. So we'll have an opportunity this fall to take another look and to refine it going into next year.
Perfect. So then if there's any ideas for the fall, do we just forward them to
City Manager?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Paul. You got to unmute.
Thank you for that. I had to go and make my notes on the pages with the really small type, and I thank staff for providing copies with large type, but I've got a question, or I have several questions. Under 5.1.3, working with the two First Nations bands, why do we not include NASCO and Cluscus in that listing?
For the commemorative site for the war chiefs?
Yeah, because they're not involved.
Okay. With regard to the next one, 6.2, which is the fire hall rebuild, it implies that there will be a referendum, or there may be a referendum. So therefore, is the fire hall rebuild sort of the next capital item in the queue for referendum?
Potentially, we're hoping to hear that we got the grant and then all will be good. But if not, then we will be having that discussion with council whether or not to
sorry,
or reverse petition.
Yeah, Councillor Paul, that the intent of refining the strategic plan is not to review the strategic plan. We've had these discussions as part of strategic plan. This is not new. So we're adopting something we've had substantive discussion of. If there's something in the strategic plan that you want to add or you think needs to be changed, that's what this discussion is about. It's not to go line item by line item and rehash conversations we've had.
Okay, then with regard to, it looks like 7.1.3, focus on economic development through hosting events and tournaments. I'd like to see a reference in 2021 or 2022, or maybe even both, to make a reference to planning for the city's centenary in 2028.
Yeah, you canvassed that during strategic planning and it wasn't put in. So this is not a strategic planning discussion, Councillor Paul. This is an opportunity for us to make sure there's no errors or omissions, and the strategic plan reflects the discussions we've had. It's not an opportunity for you to rehash something that we dealt with at that time and did not put in.
Okay, so we're not going to do anything for the city's anniversary? Like
This-
Pardon me?
This council decided it was not part of the strategic planning process. So let's move on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, so again, this has been discussed. This should be reflective of what we've discussed. All we're doing is making sure that it's tight and adopted so it can go out with our annual report, okay? And we've got a mover and seconder for it. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next, Director Bolton, you're up again.
So the purpose of this report is to update council on the Strategic Communications Initiative. So the city has hired Monogram Communications and Consulting, Inc. to provide strategic communications consultancy services for the city of Quesnel. Council has approved $50,000 to be allocated from the COVID Safe Restart Grant. The objectives of the project are to develop ongoing engagement with the community and strategic conversations, working to build on the vision set by the brand exercise in 2017, to provide a format and forum for two-way dialogue online and in person, and to weave together all opportunities and initiatives, creating the dynamic community vision as set out in the brand promise. So Monogram is going to help us by collaborating with staff on a strategic communications plan, including an audit of the city's current activities, support staff through the implementation and evaluation of the plan, develop internal engagement plans and an onboarding program for our current staff, create an internal plan and external plan and campaign, including assets, and support communications channels, developing strategic content monthly. So the project's kicking off this week. We're meeting with staff tomorrow, and we will be meeting with the executive committee on the 12th, and we will be determining goals, directions, key stakeholders, etc. And in June, meetings will be held with community focus groups, and there will be a community survey. So the startup costs for this project are covered by the $50,000, but once the strategic communications plan is more developed, there will be another request for assets required for the proposed campaigns and for the software for two-way dialogue online. So the recommendation is that council receive this report for information.
Okay, and again, this is an information only report, so there's no motion required. We just wanted to make sure that council was aware because the stakeholder process is going to begin. So the consultant's going to start having conversations. The fact that those conversations are going on may also come back to council. So we wanted to make sure you were apprised that this is evolving. I think it's very exciting. It is the key thing that came out of our strategic planning discussion, even in advance of COVID, where 2020 was supposed to be a big engagement year. We couldn't do it. Now with the provincial COVID restart funds, we're able to take some of those funds and actually enhance an already very solid platform and take it to the next level. So I think it's quite exciting. But as I say, we wanted to make sure you were aware that the consultant has been engaged and the work is beginning, so you didn't get caught off guard that conversations were happening and you weren't sure what was going on. Any questions or comments for Director Bolton? She's got the lead on this. Okay, seeing none. Let's move on then. Director of Development Services, another grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go in this in a little bit more detail than I normally do, just so that council has some good understanding of what we're applying for here. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs is committed to empowering and supporting local government's efforts to increase the province's housing supply. The process for approving development has a major impact on how quickly projects are built. Over the course of 2018 and 2019, the ministry initiated development approvals process review to address challenges and identify opportunities for improvement in the current development approvals process, to support local governments in eliminating barriers to affordable housing and accelerate the construction of homes they need in their communities. The intent of this program is to support the implementation of established best practices and to test innovative approaches to improve development approvals processes while meeting local government planning and policy objectives. The funding opportunity that comes to us is an opportune time for us right now. This will take advantage of the work that is being undertaken on revising the city's official community plan, zoning bylaw, and development services bylaw, as well as we'll be able to leverage some funds set aside for the organizational review out of the COVID Restart Grant. We recommend the following activities in the Development Approvals Program funding application and are listing them as priority areas for the grant opportunity individuals to consider as well. The activities are external review of internal processes. So that'll be to hire someone to come in and look at the external or internal review processes. Develop application procedures bylaw and amendments. Our procedures bylaw is up now for review and rewrite. So it's an opportune time, as I said. External development guides. We desperately need to go and update our external development guides as well as create them online and make sure our online presence is better for our development and local community for understanding how to go through development processes. We want to develop internal staff guides and procedures as well to ensure that current staff as well as new staff, as well as all of the departments that intermingle in the development approval processes are understanding of their roles. We want to have a look at our software. We need a bit of a software assessment, the different softwares that we utilize within the development approvals department, between building and GIS and the other databases that we use. We want to make sure that these systems are well, we know that we need some improvement there and we want recommendations on that. We also want to look at the provincial referral process and have improvements and explanatory guides on that. We do work with some provincial partners that we want to make sure that it's clear to our development community, as well as our provincial partners, as well as our internal staff on how those processes are run, make them as quick and as efficient as possible. The funding program provides an opportunity to receive these funds and to accelerate council's objectives, long-term objectives we've talked about for a long time, improving and looking at our approvals processes. UBCM will review these application funding recommendations will be made on a priority basis, and preference, I will have to note to council, will be given to governments with growth rates higher than 1% between 2011 and 2016. And actually that is a section that we have to apply on the grant. Unfortunately, our growth rate there is -1%. However, I've done a lot of work to make sure in our grant application, we have put all of the information that we have got in our housing needs and assessment plan, as well as the work that we have done in terms of looking at the growth rates. We have the work that Anna has done on seniors housing, et cetera, to facilitate that there is definitely a different issue here than the stats suggest from 2011 and 2016. So we will make sure that that comes out very clear in the application, council. So we are looking at, there is a maximum of 500,000 in consultation with with some of our consulting partners. They have recommended that we don't go for that amount. They do expect this to be extremely oversubscribed. Their recommendation was to limit to sort of our most basic needs and get a grant application in that was a little bit more in line with the size of our community. So that's why we've gone for this with these key needs that we have in the community and the request for $200,000. Is there any questions from council before I go to the recommendation?
Councillor Roodenburg.
Thank you. So I appreciate the strategy that you're using in designing this application. I was just thinking, trying to have the here and now picture, and I'm not sure if there's an opportunity to use things such as real estate, any of the realtor information that might talk about the numbers of homes that are being sold, over the past number of years, and et cetera, if that might help with your application process, given that we don't quite, fit into that 1% growth strategy piece that you mentioned earlier. Yes. But I do appreciate the fact that you're not going for the 500,000 and that we're putting some skin in the game ourselves. And I think those are all added check marks as far as I'm concerned. So good.
We're definitely looking at those things, but thank you very much. I am going to seek out a actual letter from a realtor. Thank you very much. That is a very good point.
Well, and on that point, the Northern Real Estate Board may actually be able to give you a good letter of support. So I'm not sure who our local rep is there, but you can ask around. I have Councillor Vic and then Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is tremendous, and it's too bad it seems that they're a little behind the curve on when they're accepting the data, because yeah, the reality on the ground is a lot different than it was in 2016. Director Turner, my question is understanding that this could be oversubscribed. In terms of your activity, are you able to prioritize it so that if we get less than what we asked for, you can sort of move to a plan B in terms of your activity list here?
Yeah, and that's what I've stated, that those are prioritized as per what we feel is the most necessary down. So that will be explained in the grant. And they've requested that in the grant as well.
Okay. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, thank you, Tanya, for your work on this, and I'll just echo the other councillors that it's just not relevant now. The 2016 information, and hopefully if a realtor or someone can help us out, because there's zero rents available out there, zero rentals. People are in a real tough situation. So hopefully the gap analysis and then being able to look at the whole study that's been done for the North Cariboo will throw some weight in there as well. But good luck. And 15,000 to get to 185 on the all in.
Councillor Roodenburg.
I'm just going to throw out this comment. So 2016 was when the last Canada census was done. So that's why they probably used that number for the data. And as you know, we're now into that whole new process of census, but 2016 would have been the last census.
Yeah, and I think the key context for this, so that you're aware, this is part of the Minister of Municipal Affairs mandate letter, Minister Osborne, who is the former mayor of Tofino. We have frequent conversations with her. She is very much aware of what's happening in the rural landscape with respect to housing. It's come up over and over and over again, and she's very much aware, and hopefully has given direction through, because this is really coming as part of her mandate letter, that census data is outdated, and I think Director Turner has done a really good job of positioning this for success in that light. So let's hope that that's the case. The money we're putting into it is, again, COVID grant money that we've received. And I think if it doesn't proceed, then I do think that council needs to be aware that we may be coming back and looking at doing this work and finding a way to fund it. So I think it's critical work that needs to be done. Anything else? Okay, so on the recommendation then, which involves the grant application plus signing 15,000 from the COVID restart, safe restart. Councillor Elliott, so moved. Councillor Vic, second. Any further questions or comments? Anyone opposed? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Director Turner. And do you have a sense of the turnaround time on this, or is it one of these black hole ones, or does it come with a time when they intend to let people know?
I have not picked up on the dates, but I will do that, Mayor, and have that available for you.
Okay, thank you. So then we've got SIP, and nothing was brought forward from SIP. You'll see the two formal letters, one from the federal government, one from the provincial government on our age-friendly designation. And thank you to Ms. Hartley for tracking that back and making sure that that gets closed off. So that's awesome. And then you'll see the response that we got with respect to the letter that was sent with regard to Barkerville. And you'll see that, you know, the province is indicating that they're always looking at that, and that the branch is aware of the need. So, okay. Next then, sorry, this is where I'm working on a couple of different screens here because I didn't get a print version, so bear with me 1 second.
Right. N1 bylaw 1906.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure that I've got the right. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. But what is the reading?
First three.
Okay. So first three readings, I'm caught back up with myself here. Okay, so first three readings, first, second, third of the financial plan bylaw. Councillor Elliott so moved, Councillor Runge second. Anyone got further questions or comments? And Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that even though there are a few items within the budget that I'm on record as not being in agreement with, I will be voting in support of this budget, particularly out of respect and appreciation of the work of staff and FSAC. I honestly appreciate the work that's gone into this, so I'll be voting in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's passed unanimously. Bylaw 1907, the 2021 tax rate, first, second, and third readings. Councillor Elliott so moved. Seconder, Councillor Runge. Any further questions or comments? Anyone opposed? That has carried. And then bylaw 1905, the final adoption for fire protection, prevention, and emergency services. Councillor Roodenburg so moved, seconded. Councillor Paul. Any further questions or comments?
Just to comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead. Councillor.
I've got 1908,
What did I say?
1905.
Then it's because my glasses are fogged up. It's 1908. So thanks for the correction. Councillor Runge.
Actually, on my page 73 of 93, I've got bylaw number 1902, 2021. But it's the same, so if we have to adjust the number, I just.
No, so I do have 1908. I believe that was the correct bylaw on the text as well. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
So we just have to adjust page 73 then.
Yeah,
Okay. So Ms. Hartley, you'll
I will correct that. Yeah.
get the number corrected. Thank you for catching that. Okay, so we have final adoption on the table. Anyone opposed? Okay, and it will be adopted with the right number. Changes to upcoming meeting schedule, none. Changes to committee appointments, none. Announcements, future events, anyone? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to bring everybody's awareness that May is MS Awareness Month. The Fraser Footbridge will be lit up in red for MS World Awareness Day on May 30th. Also, the Quesnel virtual MS Walk will take place on Sunday, May 30th, with a drive-by event in West Fraser Timber Park from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. So I'm hoping that many people can make their way out for that and show support for MS. And this was brought forward by Audrey Craigmile. So thank you, Audrey, for that.
Great. Anybody else? Councillor Roodenburg.
Thank you. Just want to remind people, you should be getting one of these in the mail. It is your...
Filling for census, that's just bad.
No. It's good for our community because when you fill out your census form, it actually allows all kinds of things to happen, including where they decide to build hospitals, schools, etc. So it's really easy. If you can't do it online, there's phone numbers inside that you can call and they'll mail you a paper copy. And just an FYI, it actually is the law that you have to fill these out. So just to remind people, don't forget to do this.
And you're right, it is important for our community. And Councillor Paul, you heard there's a phone number you can call, just so that you know. Did you wave your hand, Councillor Paul? I wasn't sure if I saw your hand. Okay. Any further announcements, future event? Okay, so I do have one tomorrow night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. There will be a Facebook Live information session for the pool referendum. Director Schustrom and I will be present along with all of the staff to answer any questions from the public. And the public can access that by going onto the Cariboo Regional District website. And it's on the pool referendum page is the link to participate in that live Facebook event. So it's 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Tomorrow evening. Okay. Any gallery questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Vic, so moved. Councillor Goulet, second. Anyone opposed to adjournment? Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time and your energy. Thank you, staff.